What's up, motherfuckers? I was watching this ESPN bullshit with Nature Boy Ric Flair, and I'm not like his biggest fan, I mean, but or anything like that. But what I find interesting in this is it talks about like his real life, and I'm most of the way through it. I got like maybe another 40 minutes or so left of it. It's like an hour and 16, 18 minutes. I'm like 40 something minutes into it. I've heard a lot about it off and on, like from Joe Rogan and a few other people and stuff like that. And it's very interesting. I mean, a lot of times you hear, a lot of people talking about being a father and things like that. And like, well, I can give you time, but if I give you time, I can't give you money. And if I give you money, I can't give you time, really, which is a daily issue for most fathers. But they portray him so badly, so shittily in that particular area. But I mean, a lot of it is chasing the women as hard as he did, which is the way it is. You can that doesn't necessarily make him a bad father. I don't think. In my opinion, chasing the women and shit. But I guess it does take time. If you allow it to take time away from your kids and shit, yeah, sure, okay, I get it. But it just seemed like I don't know. They portrayed him kind of harshly in that way, in my opinion. Mm. Now his wife, what surprised me about his wife was she portrayed it extremely honestly, with the way she looked at it. Um, she basically out and out said, I mean, this is his wife, this is a woman that he married. Even the women that he had kids with and shit, they all portrayed it fairly honestly, like, hey, he wasn't committed to me and all this shit. This dude, was not, I didn't have him locked down at all. She's married to him. She's saying, I didn't have the motherfucker locked down. You know what I mean? Extremely fucking honest about it, and I found that to be like shocking from a female perspective. Like, you know, how can you be married to a man and not figure that you got him locked down at all? That didn't make no sense unless you're just frightfully honest. Just brutally honest about that shit. Where you say to yourself, okay, well, you know, this motherfucker is fucking these five women whenever the fuck he wants. He's out on the road a lot. He's doesn't really stay at home that much and all that other shit, right? So no, I don't have the motherfucker locked down at all. And even though I'm married to the motherfucker, you know, and so that calls into question if these women, can be so brutally honest about a relationship that either they're having children with, a man that they're having children with, that they are living with at points in time, that he is staying with them in points of time and stuff. If they can be brutally honest in that way and look at it from a real perspective and say, okay, well, I don't have this motherfucker locked down. Yeah, yeah. Oh, brother, he made the money, man. I mean, he really came down with the money. What is it that some of these women, in these YouTube areas, in this community, who like to act like they have a man locked down, that they, when they're either married to somebody else, and I'm not trying to start any shit, you know, they portray this relationship as if it's something that it's not, and a certain individual is really pouring it on right now in all of her shit. And she loves to talk great about herself, even though everybody knows better than what she's saying, right? I really want an honest answer to this question. I want to know, what does she get out of lying and saying that something was more than what it was? That there's some sort of relationship issue that is more than what it actually was. Because the way I looked at it is we were friends that were fucking every once in a while. That's the way I looked at it. On whoever the fuck. That's the way it's always been. There ain't nobody that I even attempted to commit to, right? So this dude that did commit, was nailed down, his own wife is saying No, I didn't have this motherfucker committed. I didn't have this motherfucker locked down at all. She can admit that. But this motherfucker that I'd never committed to whatsoever, or was never married to, never had no kids with, nothing. This motherfucker, it just reeks of desperation. And are women really that desperate, you know, around here? I just don't understand that. It stinks of desperation. You know, desperate for whatever, desperate for to be viewed as this good person that they're not, to be viewed as attempting to do something they're not. I mean, like, could you imagine if this woman was married to somebody else, and this dude, I just don't get it. I don't get what they get out of it. I don't understand that shit. You know what I mean? And I just thought that this was an amazing story. I highly recommend anybody check it out. Because it really will is eye opening. He does all kinds of crazy shit. His life is just fucking nuts. And he was in a plane crash, all this other shit. I mean, there's a lot of people that have talked about it. Like I said, Joe Rogan and a lot of other guys, but a lot of other people around have talked about it off and on. And so I finally got a chance to check it out. I thought I'd check it out, and I got my little Hulu and my other little subscriptions and shit. And I said, well, I'm gonna sit down and watch this shit tonight. Check it out and see what it's about. But I mean, he was just a womanizing motherfucker. I mean, that's who he was, you know. And so nobody ever had him locked down. And like I said, everybody knew it. It wasn't like some big secret, you know. It is. There's some things that I look at and I say, yeah, that's kind of reminds me of something. Yeah, some of that. But some of it I didn't think that they really portrayed him fairly. But he even took the blame on the chin like a champ. You know what I mean? Said, yeah, I'm a fucked up motherfucker. Which I get that he really, he loved his kids. He gave them everything financially, but he really didn't spend any time with his kids. Now I can't say that I don't spend the quality time with my children or all of my children, because I did. I'd take them to the water park. I'd go do this. I go to these different places. I take them, whenever I can, and hang out with them as often as I can. I never feel like it's enough. I mean, as a father in today's society, as fathers, we never feel like it's enough. Like we've ever done enough. We don't ever feel like we've ever done enough. We always feel so shitty about ourselves, and we always feel like we could have done more, or we should do more, or this and that. I mean, we always feel that way, no matter how much we do. Like today, I did a hell of a lot, and I still just feel like, like, oh, I should have done more, and I think that we're, as a society, we are so hard on men, but yet we expect so much. They're the financial providers a majority of the time, and especially when you're talking about having families and shit, and we end up just expecting so goddamn much out of them. And I just got to be honest that, because, and they already expect so much out of themselves, but he just dogged himself out. But I mean, he brought everything financial. I wonder how much time Ric Flair's daddy had for him being a doctor. Probably not very fucking much. But he gave him all kinds of money. He gave him all kinds of privilege. I mean, that's one of the things that Ric Flair was complaining about his daddy. So it's always these fathers that are successful, but they provide the money, great providers, but they ain't spending the quality time. And I just try to do the best I can at both at the same time. And it's just a horrible balance. It's horrible to balance that. Because it's like, okay, well, if I try to get you more money, I can't give you the time. And if I give you the time, I can't give you the money. And so, one's better than the other, not necessarily, and so, yeah, I mean, but I really would like to know what these women get out of that. What do they get out of lying and saying that a certain relationship with a man is more than what it was? That it's just so much more than sex, or it's just so much more than this, or it's just so much more than that. I would really like to know that. I mean, I would like an honest answer to that. What is it that they get out of that? It obviously wasn't that, because if it was that, it would still be going. It wouldn't have stopped the way it stopped. It wouldn't have gone down the way it went down. You would see the text from me saying, "Hey, take me back, baby," or something like that. If it was truly like that, I would love to fucking know what these women get out of line about that shit. That's what I would honestly like to know. But that is a big question to me. Watching this shit, that I was like, what the fuck? This bitch is fucking married to this dude, had children with this motherfucker, and still, okay, okay, yeah, well, I ain't talking about none of that no more. So I've let all that shit go. I'm not really talking bad about anybody, but there's a particular individual that keeps going on and on. That keeps on trying to talk this shit, and she's going on and on about how wonderful of a fucking person she is after adopting children and all that other shit that she does. I'd really like to know what the fuck it is that she's getting out of that situation. Because it just bleeds desperation. Obviously, you don't have a man that is even remotely serious about you, and you've never had one be serious about you if you think that I was serious about you. And it just fucking reeks of desperation from from that particular woman, even more so now than ever. And, yes, granted, the other one is just as bad, to a certain degree, but I'm just saying, I don't get the line about it, because if it was more than that, I'd admit it. I would admit it. I would say, yes, I was totally like ready to just lock myself down with this bitch. Oh, totally. Yeah. Well, if the situation had been different, I would have locked myself down with that bitch. Yeah, I would admit that. It just wasn't the case. You know, it wasn't even close to being the case. But okay, whatever. I'd just like to know what you get out of it if it were true. If that were to be true, what do you get out of that? What happens with that? If it was actually like, and they try to portray this idea that it was that they rejected me and I didn't reject them. Who the fuck cares? What do you get out of that? If you rejected me, fine, whatever. What do you get out of that? What does that mean? That you get a a feather in your cap? Did you win something? Do you get a fucking Cupid doll? I mean, what the fuck do you get out of that? I don't understand it. I don't understand why it makes a difference. You know what I mean? I just, some of these bitches I just don't get. At least these women, on there, they sound fucking normal. They say they look at it from realistic perspectives. They say, okay, well, this motherfucker was playing around on me the whole fucking time. You know, because it wasn't either one of these women had me locked down where I wasn't fucking nobody else. I was totally fucking other people. You know, and that's the way he was doing it. What's the goddamn difference? And she's married to him, and she's not saying, "Yeah, we were totally in a committed relationship." He's paying for her house. She had children with him. He's still paying for the kids. And everything. I mean, god damn, and she ain't saying that shit. What the fuck? I don't get it. I don't get it. It don't make sense to me. But okay. Anyways, it ain't the end of the world if I don't get that answer, but I'm curious. I would love to know that. I would just love to know. Anyway, I'm out of here, motherfuckers. I thought y'all might, check that out and see it for yourself. It's pretty fucking crazy. But anyways, I'm out of here.